I'm so concerned at the moment about the changes in our business is Rachel Botsman from Collaborative Lab actually identified 4 key areas that made our companies ripe for disruption. One was complexity, when we have a complex system. The second was broken trust. When we walk out of a store because someone doesn't have stock, that breaks our trust. The third was a middleman. If we're required to go through a middleman and we can go direct, we'll go direct very, very quickly these days. And the other one is you limit my access. I don't any longer want to be limited to what I can get access to. So I want to introduce you to our panel here. We have some just amazing speakers. Firstly, we have Dato Yasmin Mahmood. So one of Malaysia's movers and shakers in the IT industry. 3 years ago, you became the CEO of the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, and your job is to transition Malaysia towards a developed digital economy by 2020. Wow. Second panelist, Emmanuel Daniel, founder of the Asian Banker, one of Asia's most respected publishers of financial intellectual reports. The Asian Banker publishes case studies and best practices across retail, transaction, technology, financial markets, and Leon, Uber. We don't need to introduce Uber at all, but you were the very first employee for Uber, and responsible also for scaling the operations to 12 cities now, the latest of which Langkawi and Miri as well. Let's start with the first question, and we'll go straight to Uber. So Uber's 7 years old, 40 million monthly active riders, 70 countries, 450 cities, 160,000 drivers, the stats go on and on. Why do you believe that Uber's been successful in Malaysia? And what are the indications that an industry is ripe for disruption?
So just to correct the fact, it's not 160,000 drivers, it's actually 16 million drivers globally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but anyway, so for those of you who aren't familiar with Uber, we're an app company. We kind of believe in this concept which is called press a button, get a ride, press a button, get work, right? Sounds like very, very simple mission statements, but at the core of what we do, we just do these 2 things, and we try to do them to a well enough extent that people actually want to use it. So to answer the first part, right, which is why do I think Uber is a success in Malaysia? I think fundamentally, if you look at the entire ecosystem, right, of urban mobility, there's a real need, right, for on-demand transportation services, right? And that kind of leads to the next part, which is, can we actually create an ecosystem which is liquid enough where we can deliver cars to every single person that needs a ride under 5 minutes? Then we look at, for example, a place like Klang Valley, right, where 90% of households actually own a car. And then we ask the question, which is, how many of these cars are actually being utilized to its full potential? So Uber did not actually invent ride sharing. We did bring ride sharing to Malaysia, but ride sharing was invented ages ago, right? For those of you who are familiar with the term taxi sapu, gypsy cabs, these things happened ages ago. What we did really well is using our technology to be able to reduce the search costs and the matching costs and the transaction costs of these rides happening, right? And when that happens, we actually see a very, very healthy marketplace developing, so much so that, hey, now ride sharing has actually become a thing, and we're very excited to be partnering with the government to actually figure out how we can realize our vision of press a button and get work, right?
What are the indications that this market, Malaysia, that it would work? Because there's lots of markets which are more challenging. So what are the indications in a market that this kind of technology would work?
Sure, so 3 main things. One is obviously mobile phone penetration, right? People fundamentally need connection to a good enough internet connection in order to use the service, number 1. Right? Number 2 is car ownership. And like I said, 90% of households in Klang Valley own a car, or more than 1 car. And the third thing we actually look at is what we call public transportation modal share. And in a lot of kind of developed cities, this number is about 60-70%. Right? In Klang Valley today, it's only 20%. So that means there is a real need for people to have access to cheaper, more convenient ways of getting from point A to point B.
Okay. So, moving to Emmanuel. So, last year you spoke at a Huawei conference and you talked about kill core banking. Quite provocative. So I'm going to quote you. You said there's a war going on and we want to win the front end of the war. You talk about the financialisation of everything. So these are pretty strong words. What's happening in finance and what's changing right now that's affecting us?
Just by way of introduction very quickly, I own an organization called the Asian Banker. We started it in 1996. It's called the Asian Banker. Okay? It started as a publication. 90% of our revenue was advertising. And fast forward to 2017, we have offices in Singapore, Beijing, Dubai. We do events in Nigeria and Africa and a lot of the emerging markets. We're going into Central Asia and so on. So we're no longer Asian. And we cover financial services, not just in terms of what the banks do, but also what the non-banks are doing today. So today you have peer-to-peer platforms and so on, which are not banks, emulating what banks are doing, but without carrying the asset in the industry. So I've been disrupted on two fronts, the publishing industry and the financial services industry. And on both the fronts, the operating word is digitisation. Everything we imagine is being digitized. Every business that we can possibly think of is being reduced to being digitized. A step beyond digitization, and it's something that most people don't think about, but I do because I'm in the financial services industry, is what I call financialize. For all that is being said today about how digitization is going to change the way we live, how much information it's going to give us, and so on, financialization is the ultimate step to destroying life as we know it today. In other words, in the future, if you sold durians, and if you can digitize information on the availability of durians through a whole year, if you can use that digitized information to create a durians futures market, and that market can be traded, not just on a regulated exchange, but by people interacting with each other and planning their durian consumption 3 years from now, and then trade it with each other, you would have destroyed the durian industry, because you would have created a market for itself that will be increasingly disconnected from the underlying asset, and that is the availability of durians. So that's actually where we are heading into the future. Something that I was thinking about as the first session went on, and as some of the introductions being made here, is not so much the promise of the future itself, but in financial services, it's actually everything that we are doing to refrain getting into that future. Many of us know that banks like saying that they are digitized, they are on the mobile device, they've got internet banking, they're making life easy for you. The truth is, and remember I said this, okay? The worst enemy of digitization today is the financial services industry. Banks, and I want you to have this at the back of your mind as you think about this. Any industry that can refrain or resist the march towards the future is resisting it as far as possible. When we think about the future, when we think about things in finance, for example, blockchain or bitcoins and so on, we are actually thinking about a future where there is no middleman, as you said in your introduction, right? That the whole intermediation process is taken away, where you have access to what you want at the time you want it, the way you want it, without a middleman. And the information on an Uber car that is made available to you in a transparent manner.
It's about simplicity as well, right?
And it's about simplicity, it's all that the good stuff. But big business is resisting it as far as they can. So every time you hear about a Visa or a MasterCard, sponsoring a conference on the future of payments. All of you who use a credit card today, when you go abroad, you're paying 1.5% on top of your transaction, on top of the exchange rate, okay? And on top of that, a fee, an annual fee on your transaction. If you just Google the exchange rate between your purchase, the Google rate for it, and what actually appears on your credit card, you will be shocked. Because that's where the banks and the card associations make their money from. Already in China, and on my mobile phone, okay, I have WeChat and Alipay. These are non-banks that create communities where I can pay you instantly without a bank receiving a transaction fee. Okay? And the banks around the world, including Malaysia, are resisting that as far as possible because they don't know what they're going to do if they don't have that income on the transaction fee. All of the technology to make payments between you and someone anywhere in the world instantly with the lowest possible exchange rate exists already. Okay? Now, just one more point, which is that, and in resisting this change, banks want to sit on their float and so on. And I was thinking, what then makes a large business able to embrace the change that's coming through? And there are two things that they need to give up. Every time you open the newspaper and you see that Maybank has declared a profit of $4 billion, or any of the banks have their profits in the billions and have retained their return on equity on their shareholder trust, they're not moving into the future. And every time you hear that a large business is running hackathons and all this fun stuff for its staff to empower them and help them to understand the future, they're not moving forward. You think that they are, but they're not. Because what they're doing is mollycoddling their staff, their employees, and making them believe that they're going to be part of that future. The truth is, the future is going to be so disruptive that half of them do not deserve to have a job. And the only way that you can avoid what is called a Kodak moment. Now, Kodak, remember, actually invented the digital future, but couldn't move into it because it had a huge stream of hanger-ons that it needed to feed the distribution base for the physical film. And it couldn't come to the point, the board couldn't come to the point of saying, we want to give that up. And then exist without a revenue for a while, basically. So these are the two industries that I cover, publishing and financial services. And these are the things that I worry about. What will make us not get there?
Which is really, really a great lead-in, especially with the Kodak story. So Dato Yasmin, my question is, so you've got 4 pillars that you need to address. One is getting investment to come to Malaysia, encouraging talent, building local tech champions, making them tech icons, improving living standards for all as well. So my question is this: which industries do you see and do you believe are at the greatest risk right now for disruption? Do you have any stories you can share with us?
So if you look at the industry in the past that has been disrupted the most, and I was trying to do some research to see whether there's any consensus. I think there is the two common ones seems to be the media industry, as you would very well be familiar with. The other one would be telecommunication industry. You know, that's undergoing through a massive disruption and still will be continuing. I think there's a lot of things happening also in the whole retail and hospitality industry. I am, at this point of time, the most excited and the most fearful of what's happening in the area of digital technology. You know, we know about PDA, big data analytics, IoT, virtual reality, augmented reality. You know, I was amused at how Pokemon Go became such a phenomenon when it's only a simple implementation of augmented reality. Can you imagine when augmented reality gets into gets into education, both the positive and the negative impact of that. Now, but that's only what we know in the digital world. Now you talk about what's happening in the physical world, and you must have heard about this Industry 4.0, fourth industrial revolution. But if you couple what's happening in the digital innovation, and you couple that with what's happening in the area of material science, for instance, solar panels, I think in California, right? Tesla has got a whole house built that is purely built on solar absorption material. So it's a self-sustaining house. I think the one that is the closest to us right now is the combination of BDA, IoT. Well, it's all about data, right? It's about the power of data. We've heard about how data can be predictive. From data being prescriptive, now it's going to be predictive.
So you're actually thinking of ways that you can interrupt your own technology in order that you can get there first rather than someone else. So you're assuming someone else will interrupt that. So I'd really like to understand, is there any industry out there that is disruption proof at the moment?
Sure, so just to clarify what you said earlier, I think when it comes to disruption, the way we see disruption is actually not just about technology, it's about disrupting your own business model. And I think at Uber we saw phase one of the disruption was when we moved away from our kind of premium service offering, Uber Black, to offering what we call a P2P pure ride-sharing product called UberX, right? In that sense, that business model was disruptive because rather than using kind of licensed premium vehicles and putting them on a system where the average basket size is high, the profit margin is a lot better, we decided, hey, let's tap into this cheaper source of supply where we actually don't have to invest in any assets, where people already own cars, and really tap into the fact that the incremental cost of offering transportation is so much lower, and actually put these cars onto our platform so that we can actually grow at a pace that's a lot faster.
In publishing, you said that most of your revenue was generated by advertising, but you're still a publisher. What are you publishing now, and how has content changed, and what does it mean?
Yeah, I have a thought at the back of my head, but let me answer that question first. So today, when you say Asian banker, we are no longer the news business. That's a business that is fought and defeated and gone long time ago. You can Google for news for free on Yahoo, on Google, and stuff like that. If anyone wants to be in the news business, you will die. For its own sake. So what we are is, within the financial services industry, we publish a lot of data on how banks need to benchmark themselves, as they call it. These are horrible words to use, but basically where they can monitor their own evolution based on what other banks are doing and what. So we sell lots of data to banks. So we're no longer a publishing house in that sense. We're more of a research intelligence company in that regard. But whether it's publishing or financial services or any one of us in this room, I think the question that we need to answer here is, how do we internalize a narrative for ourselves on how we get from here to there? Meaning that there's a lot of information out there on what that future is going to be: augmented reality, robots, stuff like that. But we are here. We are here where we're still buying our teh tarik at the store. Half the country is still very basic and stuff like that. And some of us may even be in industries where we haven't started this digitization journey yet. Okay, all of us need to have that at the back of our heads. My IT department is in Kuala Lumpur, and the team that is in the IT department has been there since I started the company in 1996. And you know something? The head of, or rather the more senior members of this team, and I think some of you will feel this, that they built their careers in the days when the big thing in digital was the website. When technology moved to mobile, I had to come to Kuala Lumpur and shake them into fear and saying that, excuse me, your skills are out of date now. Okay, we've now moved into mobile. And then I found that half my KL staff did not have smartphones, because at that time, I think 5-6 years ago, the smartphone packages were too expensive, so people were still trying to use the traditional phones. And I said, if any one of you who do not subscribe to a smartphone can leave the company, because you're not going to take me to the future. You know, and with that, I actually had to help them push their own minds into where the future is coming. So the first thing is really that this future is a moving target. Skills that you learned just 5 years ago is not relevant anymore. And yesterday I was talking to Christine and I said, you know what, I just realized that I don't look at emails anymore. I actually look at emails once every 3 days. And that's because the social media platforms like WeChat and WhatsApp helps me create groups, have a chat, break it up and then go another group, and then also to put my information out there on voice, video and text. So email is already 1990s today. So this is a moving target. And when we think about how social media and data and analytics is changing the world, if you remember during the US elections, Facebook was accused of being partisan in the elections basically and so on. Some things that they will be accused of today, they won't be accused of tomorrow. The troubles that social media platform will face will evolve in itself. And it's a constantly moving target. So we're not talking about that we have left one station and we are going to another station, and when we get there, we'll all be all right. It's a constantly moving target. And what's interesting about financial services is this. All of us know that Alibaba, if I say Alibaba, you'll say, wow, Now, Alibaba is a 1990s creation when China's big proposition to the rest of the world was to be the lowest cost manufacturer. And because of that, all that Jack Ma did, he's a school teacher, remember that, huh? He set up a website, and on it thousands upon thousands, and then millions of little shops and buyers and sellers got together to do deals with each other. And then it became huge, and then Goldman Sachs came in, put some money in there, and then it took off. Today, Alibaba is not going to define the future. I met a company in Kenya who's trying to do something on blockchain. And what blockchain is, okay, there's a lot of hype on blockchain, but some things are visible, which is in Kenya, what he's trying to do, or what this group of people are trying to do, is get every farmer to put on data on what they're farming and stuff like that, and then to create a trusted platform where the distributors can collect and can plan their markets and so on. And this group is doing this thing called Agri-Ledger in Kenya, in Myanmar, in Papua New Guinea. And in Papua New Guinea, there was a group of farmers who are harvesting sea cucumber without even knowing that there's a huge market somewhere in the world, in China, for example, who love sea cucumber, would pay a premium for it. And just by putting this basic data on blockchain, not website, and the big difference is that on blockchain, trusted parties can interact immediately, instantly, and that makes a global platform for data in the emerging markets that didn't have it before. So that's the other thing, and that is you do not have to be a highly sophisticated country to bring to life a lot of what is happening on the digital front. Okay, so China is going to start looking like 1990s, and parts of Africa is going to look like, the 21st century.
Thank you. So, I keep hearing about people, and in Malaysia, talent has been a really big challenge. Hiring people that understand technology, hiring people that know what they're doing, building cultures that are conducive to the new digital era. So my concern is, if we're educating our people to create new technology continually, and technology is continually evolving, do people even matter anymore? We're introducing more and more technology, And people, are we becoming obsolete? How do we operate traditional businesses that are run by people?
It's all about people, right? But it's about the people having the right talent and the right mindset. So maybe I can frame it in a bigger scope, because I'm representing government, which is just 2.5 years ago. Previously, I was on the other side, and as a government, somebody mentioned just now about future-proofing your business thing. What you talked about is how do you future-proof Uber, how do you future-proof finance industry, and a government perspective, how do you future-proof a whole nation? If you look at the whole, what constitutes what we can do, what are the building blocks, of course, of that government can do, because I'm a firm believer that government should be a catalyst for the private sector. Like Negara, when the new governor came on board, I was very pleased that one of the first things he did was to say, okay, fintech, be as disruptive as you possibly can in a sandbox. So that sort of confines things. And in fact, there was this new ride-sharing act that has been that is currently being worked on, right? So that is on a regulatory framework, so infrastructure, regulatory framework, but the most important part is about talent. And 2.5 years ago, when I first joined MDEC, and people ask me what keeps me awake at night, I'll say it's talent. And now I feel that that's not my first thing that I think about at night anymore, because adoption is the one that keeps me awake now. Adoption, especially amongst our local corporates, our SMEs, is something that really concerns me. But let me just go to answer your question about talent. There are just a couple of points I want to make. Number one is that, it's all about talent. Jobs will be disrupted. Jobs will be eliminated. Jobs which is going to be, there was a stat that I came across recently that talks about the fact that if you're a kid and just entered the school in the education system right now, when you come out and work, 65% chance of you getting into a job that doesn't even exist right now. That if you are thinking I'm going to the legal profession, 39% of the jobs in the legal profession will be eliminated in the next 10 years alone.
How do we help our people and help the cultures in our business right now? Is there something the government's doing? Is there something you want the government to do? Emmanuel, how does this work?
So if you look at an employee or people as just a cost item that contributes, say, X percentage of your turnover that you need to spend on, versus them being a potential revenue scaler, the more you invest, the more you see your top line growing, the way you approach it is going to be very, very different. So let me give you an example, right? If you see it just a cost item, you're going to be like, okay, by next quarter or by my next annual P&L, I want to cut this down by 2 percentage points. That means I want to squeeze as much as I can, make sure the business grows without me growing and investing in that line item. Is that good for a kind of disruptive culture? Is that good as we want to prepare every single employee to be ready for a disruption of big changes in the business model? Not necessarily. But what if we see it as, hey, if I invested 2 more percentage points of my P&L this quarter over the next 6 months, what if I can see a 10% uplift in my top line, right? And then the question is, how do I get there? What do I invest within company processes, training, technologies in order to get there? Which of these individuals can park under this bucket, which can actually create more value than they're creating today? And which individuals do I need to invest in retraining? And which individuals do I need to tell them, look, fundamentally, if you're not performing, then these are the options, right?
Big point is that because of two factors. One is the funding phenomena. Since 1994, since the time when Amazon was getting funding which had nothing to do with its revenue feed, and then you have Uber and all this fintech and startup funding culture. I mean, there was a period where the US was releasing $60 billion a month into the market. In China, did $300 billion a couple of years ago. All this quantitative easing going into the marketplace has created this whole culture of funding a whole range of ideas that supports your business for which you do not need to invest in. And all of those businesses being created are now on the cloud. So in other words, you are now free to do what you do best. And if there's one thing that that the digital space values a lot is authenticity and a personality in the digital space. That's all you need to do. Everything else you can buy. When I talk to my IT people, I say, oh, you guys have problems designing a good login feature. You Google, you find somebody who does logins well, outsourced, done. So that reduces your cost, and that forces you to ask yourself every day, what is it that I do that can be of value to the people I'm trying to reach out to? And on the internet, on mobile, in the digital space, because of all the trash that's out there, they actually recognize what's authentic. They can straight away see that you're the guy who knows how to bake a cake the best. You're the guy who knows how to repair furniture the best.
So we've got time for very, very quickly. What happens to the victims? Open question. The companies that are disrupted. What happens to them?
I think before that, I just want to talk about the comment about the about the what do companies have to do about talent before I get back to that. So, you spoke about investing in the skill set, but the culture, I think, breaking through the culture is perhaps one of the biggest steps that a company has to cross, because there is a bit of a tension right now. The people in the management level are not necessarily people. They do understand, they do hear it, but they have not really internalized it, and they have not really embraced the pace and the extent on which they have to change. And that is just normal. I mean, it's just resistance to change. Then you have the other people, the new ones, the younger ones, who are ready to embrace, who are ready to disrupt. But they are coming into at the entry level, and their voice are not necessarily heard. Therefore, they realize that they are being very ineffective. And with the young generation, with the millennials and the Gen Y, when they're not feeling relevant, then they will just move. So that is why I think one of the most important, and this is I see more and more corporates embracing this, it's more of how they do it, the different models, is to really capitalize on the startups. How do corporations work with startups? Because innovation, pushing the envelope, will be done by a group of small people with a passion, with a dream. And if they are, if these people are being just brought into an organization which has got the culture, which has got the mindset that is very traditional, then they're just going to be ineffective.
Can I just to add, do not respect institutions, and do not respect jobs. In fact, this is a topic that I have at the back of my head when I talk to my friends in Singapore and Hong Kong. When you think about it, in all of Asia, there are some cities that are natural hubs for talent, for funding, right? So many young people in Singapore are very highly well paid, and those are exactly the people who are not going to make the change.
So, okay, your question. What will happen to these people? And that is a very important argument right now, because despite the rate of innovation that's coming up,
Not just the people, the companies as well, both.
What will happen to the companies? Oh, you look at Uber, for instance, right? I mean, you are the master of disruptor, but now you're going to be disrupted as well because of this driverless car. So if they do not, and I think Leon said it, the jury is still out. You are a 70 billion startup. That's almost like an oxymoron, right? But if they don't, there will be this vicious cycle. It's going to continue. So do not respect the companies, or respect the jobs. It's about the ideation. How much
and governments should stop protecting large businesses.
I had the honor of meeting with Jack Ma recently when he came over to launch the Digital Free Trade Zone, and something that he said really caught on with me. I could really agree to that. He says the concept of 30-30-30. Any of you have read his 30-30-30? It's that in the next 30 years, the world will be defined by people in their 30s with company size, who owns company with the size of 30. So yes, in Malaysia, the SMEs only contribute, although there are 97% of SMEs, is only contributing to 39% of the GDP. In China, I think in the US, in the Western world, it's about 50%, and in China, it is almost 80%. So yes, I think there is something wrong, integrally wrong, with our economic structure, where most of it most of the GDP or the economic contribution are in the hands of these big companies, and not only big companies, but even government-linked companies. I don't think anybody will be, and I don't think it's even unique to Malaysia. But we had this survey that talks about creativity mindset, and we had it done at Standard 1 and Standard 4. Then we had another one done in Form 1 and Form 4. So the creativity index skews down so significantly in the secondary school. So which means that when kids goes into schools, they are still in their creative mindset, but something happens that will just curb their creativity. So, but I don't think it's only in Malaysia. Everywhere is the same. So now, how do we go about doing it? And it's a struggle that every country, every government has to look into. How do you unleash the talent, your inherent talent? I mean, look at Silicon Valley. It's not even organic talent, right? Silicon Valley will get into trouble when the HB1 visa is going to be, which may go away. Does America has the best education system to create this? No, they just pick the best talents from all over the world to come to beautiful San Francisco. But without that, then we'll see what is going to happen also to Silicon Valley.
I'm asking Emmanuel, what is your thoughts, and are you in favour of universal basic income?
Yeah, so universal basic income in different forms already exists, especially in socialist countries. I fear for countries with large populations, anything more than 100 million people, Philippines, Vietnam, Bangladesh, South Africa, and so on. And these are countries that are built on the premise that the larger your population, the greater the churn and the ability to build GDP. With high levels of automation, the cheap factories that used to go to the Chinas and the Indias of the world are going back to the France and to the Germanys because it costs less to be constructed on a robot than with people. So the thing about universal basic income is that I did have a very important thought there, but I'm just trying to remember what my most important thought on that one is. But it reinforces again what should the basic human activity be. Because with universal basic income, your most important activity might be leisure. And it just turns our value system on its head. So countries like Singapore, which has been teaching its people that hard work is important, now has to turn it around and say that, guys, take 3 days off in the weekend and go build the GDP by entertaining yourselves, and so on. So, and it just changes our entire, value system, our entire morals about, what we think is important. Let me just say that, but actually it was a little bit more there, but that's my initial thought there. The big problem with universal basic income is that the more you're able to do that, you actually make government bigger than society. And there's an inverse relationship between government and entrepreneurship. The larger the government, the less the entrepreneurship. Okay, it's inversely proportional. And if a government is actually capable of collecting good taxes and then redistributing it as minimum income, that makes a society a lot more governed by a structure rather than allowing it to morph over time. And that's something that every country needs to think about.